Hello, hi guys. Good afternoon. All right, so I see a few of us live here. Can we get a few comments, please, so that we updated of how your paper went today? A few comments, and we'll be sharing the analysis. We have been working hard since the paper came out, and there are a few key insights that we were able to pull off. And we are currently also presently working, members of our team, to bring you a more in-depth analysis of what happened. Good afternoon, Shivani. Do let me know how your attempt went. Come on, guys. How was the paper? Were you able to fulfill all of the questions and answers within the stipulated time? Who else has joined us here? Come on, guys. A few words on how you found the paper. Hello, Anuradha. Good noon. I hope you all went through and will come back with shining colors with the paper, because considering how well we worked with our DJS prelim series, I think this was a pretty good shot. So how did you feel with the series catering to this paper? Let me know how your attempt was. Hello, Seema. Hi, guys. All right, then. Series did, in fact, yeah, it helped a lot. I'm glad that it did. What about the rest of us? There's around 10 of us here. Come on, guys. How about we get to know a bit more about how the paper went for you? First things first, was the stipulation, was the time enough, or did you face any issues? Yes, guys. The key also, we'll send out our key uh, around after this session ends. We'll be providing you the key, projected key. We are working on that. We have almost all of the work done for that as well. We'll be sending that out in another session, which immediately follows this as well. But presently, I saw a few questions were exactly the same. Yes, Shivani, which is great news for us, because we'll be discussing our QTS as well, which is where we tell you how many questions we had in the prelims test series that were directly featured in the DJS prelims. So we are very hopeful, and we are uncovering quite a lot of questions so far. So with that, I'll begin with the analysis. First of all, let me congratulate all of you. The paper was not as difficult as everyone was expecting. So I'm hoping you also went through with the same spirit and could find the same, could find the same reflection in the paper. It was moderate. It did not incline towards the very easy side, and at the same time, it did not incline towards the very tough testing and difficult side. I am sure you guys will agree. So as per normal, we know that there were a total of 200 questions. The positive marking was at 1, the negative marking was at 0.25, and your time was 2.5 hours. And through what we saw, of course, the safe attempts will lie at 150 through 160 of your questions. So I'm hoping all of you made an attempt towards that count. So 150 to 160 should be your safe zone of attempting. And while the difficulty level, again, I'm stressing, was moderate. So just give me a few of your inputs in the in the comments as well. What did you think about the difficulty level? Were you able to focus on and find out the answers quickly? Just let me know that as well. Yes, guys. Just let me know how you thought the questions were, the difficulty level was. We are stressing that it was moderate. How did you find it? Um, okay, you can see my screen. All right, here we are. So we have been scanning through the questions, going through the questions 50 by 50. We're going through the first 50, writing down analysis, going to the next others. The paper we found was again moderate in level. The questions over there that we saw was that the questions were conceptual mostly. They were testing your concept, your understanding of all the legislations and all the laws, and the amendments that have happened so far. There was a question testing the J&K amendment as well. So that has to point us towards the fact that we have to bear in mind the amendments going on, whether they were in 2019, a bit back, but also we have to bear in mind the amendments that have lasting features up until now. So we saw that J&K question over there as well. So they were mostly leaning towards conceptual testing questions. There were also a few in-depth questions. That's not to say that all the questions were easily, they could be easily done. There was nothing, no much more substance to the paper, and its its general level of difficulty. There was also avenues and opportunities for you to employ a lot of your understanding. So in-depth questions, I mostly saw this in CPC. A few questions towards arbitration and conciliation that had us thinking for a while as well. So, and then of course, most of the questions I saw apart from that, especially when we come to CPC, they were procedure based questions, application based questions. There's one application based questions where they give you a fictitious situation, but there were procedure based questions that clearly asked you to employ the correct form of procedure in those situations. We had questions where it was asking you which rule, which order of CPC to employ. There were questions in IPC even, which does not tend to happen a lot. In IPC even, there were questions that were asking you this and this happened, which section of the IPC will this fall under, where will the punishment be addressed, right? So which crime does this belong to, which provision of IPC caters to this particular situation. And we are expecting the cutoff to be, per the questions, to around 140 for your general categories, your open merit. And that is the consensus amongst all of us. So it might even go a bit further up of 140, but not by a lot, considering what we think. And now we come over to our subject-wise analysis. We analyzed constitution first of all, and the bulk of the questions in the constitutional law paper were case law-based questions, and then it was concept testing. So case law-based questions, and I saw one of the questions in I believe IPC or I saw it in CRPC. Yeah, and it was based on the exact circumstances of the Rahul Gandhi fiasco that happened a while ago. So the exact circumstances were simulated in a fictitious situation, and the question was asking you to apply parts of CRPC. So not just in constitutional law that they are going through case law based situations, but even in present existing case laws, they are trying to simulate situations and have you thinking critically about what should be applied, how it should be applied. So of course they had this going on in case laws for constitution, but they were also trying to test concepts otherwise. So there was case law based questions in your constitutional law paper, and then there were concept testing questions over there as well to try and poke your brains about how the constitutionality in India is applied, what goes where. And then for your CPC, like I said, it was mostly direct, surprisingly direct, but then also a lot of the questions cater to your procedures, which order, which rule, what happens, which of these circumstances will happen, which of these is most likely to happen, those sort of questions for your CPC. And your CRPC also, I found it moderate mostly, while there were around, I would say, out of 100, there were around 20% of the questions which were difficult, and a heavy majority of them were moderate, and then the remainder was quite easy. Again, they were trying to, like I said, the Rahul Gandhi case example turned it into a fictitious situation, and they were asking you questions about what can be applied, what cannot be applied. There were concept based questions which we generally tend to solve in CRPC. What happens where, who is the correct authority to deal with the situation. There were application based questions where they were presenting you again with a fictitious situation where you had to apply the provisions known to CRPC, innate in CRPC. And then, of course, there were also a surprising amount of direct provision based questions about CRPC as well. Then, coming on to your IPC portion, I would say, was 30% of it was easy. Again, asking you about direct provision based situations, such as where does this punishment belong, which provision of the IPC talks about this kind of offense, right? Where does this fall? There was a question on stalking, the punishment to stalking, where does it fall, which particular provision does it fall into? And they were asking quite a lot of questions, testing your, the application of punishment provisions as well, or if there was a certain crime that was committed in the example in the question, which punishment could not be awarded. So a lot of use of negatories as well. So of course, like I kept stressing in the prelims series, make sure you're making purposeful reading of the question. Just be very aware of how you're reading it. So any student who read through the question really fast and did not see the word not, right, which of these punishments may not be awarded, is basically answering the question wrong. So let's be very clear. Also, a question on dowry death also asked you which of the following is not an essential under the provision of dowry death. So things like these, they sneak up on you. You don't realize that the word not is there. So a lot of those questions as well, especially in punishment based, and where we talk about the concomitants of a crime, in those areas there were a lot of these questions which used a bit of tricky reading. So for that, we could classify them as moderate. Otherwise, they were quite easy to understand. If you were reading them right, they were easy. But if you were in a habit of panicking through the questions, they could be moderate or even become difficult for you, because you would then answer them incorrectly. So 30% of your IPC portion was quite easy. 50, I would think, was 50 to 60, I would think, was moderate, and then the remainder was difficult. Not a lot of difficult questions. They were, infusing a lot of the illustrations into the questions. There was a lot of concept testing. There were application-based questions where they were giving you situations. There was a situation of instigation. The person was instigating another to commit an offense relating in, resulting in death. But then the other person changed their mind. So is the person still liable to be tried for abetment towards that particular crime? That was a question. Then we move on to the contract law portion. Contract law, again, was conceptual, pretty much conceptual. It derived from your illustrations from the Bear Act, very general understanding based questions on concepts. So the broader areas we focus on in contract law, they were tested. Of course, we generally wouldn't recommend that you lose focus of those broader areas. So that was very well reflected in this paper. And then they made quite a good use of the illustrations inside the Contract Act. Then similarly for LLP Act, for arbitration and conciliation, LLP, for particularly arbitration and conciliation, like I told you, surprising lot of application-based questions. But then that's quite a good way of testing arbitration and conciliation, because by application-based questions, you test all the procedures, you test the time limits, you test who can become what, who can become a sole arbitrator, who can perform as a conciliator, and stuff like that. So that was tested a fair bit. We had evidence where it heavily relied on directly importing the questions from the Bear Act. So not a lot of mental gymnastics required for the Evidence Act questions. There were those. And a Specific Relief Act, we had questions which were moderate to difficult. And then again, the wording was quite confusing. For SRA, they were making full use of the time limits and trying to confuse you, punching in many dates and having you do the math to figure out whether the time limits and everything was there when it came to limitation, when it came to all of these acts where you apply, where it is a lot of procedure involved, even for CPC for that matter, right? So they were trying to make you understand which portion of this is barred from the ambit of the court. So they did the very same with SRA. I saw questions heavily relying on situations, created situations, fictitious situations, so that you could readily apply your mind. There was that. Then a limitation again, directly based on BERAC, they were asking you questions, a bit of application based questions over there as well. POXO also, the question was application based. The wording of the question was quite tricky, but otherwise the question was easy. Commercial Courts Act, we again saw moderate to difficult range of questions, went from discussing the general ambit. Of course, the entire Commercial Courts Act is very procedural, but went from discussing the general ambit of the Commercial Courts Act to actively trying to think about the procedural aspect of law. English, quite moderate in nature, and general knowledge also, yours was very moderate in nature with the, of course, with GK for DJS, you have to understand the importance of current affairs as well as legal knowledge. So, quite a heavy focus on legal knowledge as well as current affairs and your general GK. So I found with all of that that the leaning of the cutoff will be around 140 or just a bit plus 140 maybe. But let me know in the comments how many questions you attempted and how and where do you project your scores to be. Of course, I was making sure with the prelims test series that I'm focusing on you answering the questions within the stipulated time. So I sure hope you did that. And I was also focusing on teaching you to read the questions correctly, which, if anything, this attempt of DJS should have taught all of us that reading the questions is quite important, and paying attention to the use of words not, and which of the following may not, which of the following cannot. You cannot skim through and skip through words in the paper. Of course you cannot. You just have to read it very purposefully once again. So let me know, according to all of those inputs from my end, what is your projected score. I'm keeping a tab on the comments right here. Just let me know what the projected score is. Yes, Shubham, Indu, Kanika, Shivani, Seema, and Anuradha. And who else do we have here? Just let me know. Again, we are just about ready to receive our QTS data, so I can reveal how many of the questions in the actual DJS paper were actually discussed in our Lossicos prelims test series for DJS. So anyone who has gone through all the papers of the prelims test series, it's a sure shot that you have answered these questions correctly, provided you were learning in the proper manner from the prelims test series. So we have a very good amount of questions that coincide with the paper. So I'm extremely happy and grateful for that. Just let me know how your attempts went. Come on, guys. Shubham, Indu, Kanika, what do you think your projected score is at? We have a significant portion of the QTS done. We'll be receiving it anytime now. And I would like to inform you, I'm just receiving news that only in 10 minutes we'll be able to start our answer, not just our answer key, but we will share the questions and we will solve the questions along with you live, much like we did in the quizzes that we, did after each DJS mock paper. And in about 10 minutes we'll be ready with solving the paper live with you. We'll have Vishal and Gagandeep join us from the test prep team. So again, let's move on to the expected cutoff data. Let me see. Okay, 138. Kanika, excellent. That is amazing. 138 through 142, probably Indo 135 through 140. Shubham, come on. Seema, Anuradha, what do you guys think? What is your standing currently? What do you feel like? I'm sure you'll have analyzed it a bit, but then make sure you take out your question papers and you sit down. So I think we'll be discussing the question paper and problem question solving from the perspective of set number D. So we have set number D ready, with which we have prepared our answer key. So make sure you have your own sets of your questions ready by the side so that you can quickly navigate to the correct question number. and then you're not very confused. You can take it off and check whether per projected correct answer, per projected answer key, your question is correct or incorrect. Of course, it's all tentative, but it will give you an amazing insight into what the scores could be. Shubham, come on. Indu, Kanika, I'm not receiving any inputs on how your score was. Again, just to re-emphasize that the scores will be cut off per our projections to around 140. I am expecting it can go up to 140, 142, or perhaps even 143, but 140 is a safe bet we are willing to set. So let's hope it stands there. Again, the paper was quite moderate. We have few other students joining us. Like I said, this is a subject-wise analysis. Constitution had case law based concept testing papers. There was a direct procedural understanding based in CPC. CRPC tested mostly moderate with case law based and application based questions as well. A lot of provision based questions used. So the difficulty level was the highest questions were from moderate level, then easy level, and then very few difficult uh, questions used. IPC again, very illustration, very concept and application based, very situation based questions they were providing, and a lot of questions asking you where the punishment was, where the provision was, where the correct application of IPC's provisions was. Contract, very basic questions involved direct illustrations derived from the Bare Act. The same we saw with evidence, arbitration, LLP, conciliation, concept and application based questions. A heavy reliance on application based, situation based questions in arbitration and conciliation. For your SRA, the questions were quite moderate, but the tone and the words used and the way in which the questions were phrased was quite confusing for someone who would get overwhelmed easily. So you really had to rely on reading the questions chunk by chunk, bit by bit, and trying to fit all the pieces together. And of course, if you have a good understanding of the provisions, you would have been able to answer the SRA questions without any difficulty. Limitation, again, deriving heavily from the Bare Act. POXO had questions that were application based. Commercial court, again, moderate to difficulty level, and it had procedural aspects questions testing the procedural aspects of the paper. We'll have the QTS in a bit. Again, to inform you, we'll be solving the question paper live, guys. The question paper will be solved live. That is set D. Make sure you have your papers readily available with you. The question paper being solved live will commence in about 8 to 10 minutes over here. So we are awaiting our QTS presently, and so far we have a good amount of questions. We have about over 50% of the questions done, and so we, as you know, we created a holistic test series program, DJS program for prelims DJS 2023. It directly reflects how many of our prelims test series questions were present in the actual prelims examination. And per our current updates, we have the data of around first 150 to 100 to 125th questions, and per that we have already tackled about 55 56 questions. So we are very hopeful, and as soon as we have the update, I'll release it here, and later today we'll release the official we'll release the tentative QTS, because we'll be doing it in depth in a while as well. So we'll release it by later tonight, and after this session you'll have your problem solving, question solving session as well, where you can tag and check how many of your questions have been done correctly. Okay, Anuradha is in third year, is here for the analysis. Okay, Anuradha, if anything you can take away from the analysis is that there is no speculation to which year will turn difficult, which year will turn moderate, and which year will turn moderate to difficult in terms of the difficulty of questions. So your best bet is to always prepare for the higher difficulty level. So the questions we involved in DJS prelims mock test series were perfect to prepare from that angle. So make sure you're making full use of the analysis we provide, the attemptable PYQs we provide. This exact paper will also be attemptable and available in a PYQ format in a little while. So yeah, so per current analysis, we have over 55% of the questions in the bag already. So make sure you are tuning in, and make sure that you keep persevering in the hard work you get, because perseverance is the hard work you do after you get tired of the hard work you already did. So no matter how far you have come along, don't lose sight of how close to the actual goal you might be. So if you feel overwhelmed, or if you feel really downtrodden because of the lack of results in your efforts so far, know that it's not very far away that you'll gain the actual results. So be very clear in your attempts, be very clear in your mind, just keep on focusing and keep on going, and you shall receive the best results possible. Make sure you are tuning in for the session of problem solving, and as of presently we only have the data up until the first 125th or so question. So yeah, for that we have 55% of the questions done already. As soon as we have more information, I'll let you know, and we'll start the problem questions paper solving session in a little while. So we'll see you at the question paper solving session. Make sure you don't go anywhere. It will start, and I surely don't want you to miss out on any question. So make sure you tune in right back again, and we'll see you shortly. So take care, guys. We'll see you shortly. Let's be back in a little while. Bye bye.